Hello and welcome to episode 229 of RuggaMatrix International. I'm your host, Juro Sen. This is Ben Kimber.
Good evening, Juro.
Ben, we tried to record Sunday night and we had a slight audio problem, but you know what? We didn't like the show anyway, so we're having another crack.
Was it me or you? What was the problem?
I think you were taking a few shots high.
A few high shots. Good
Don't know if we
footage
should
for
talk
that.
about that. Or should we talk about
Exciting.
it? Yes, the strike issue of the week. What is it, Ben Kimber? Let's get straight into it.
Well, great weekend of international rugby again.
Fantastic. Close games?
This season, close games, and this season is really delivering, right? Always lots to talk about. It could have been Michael Checker and the Wallabies' great escape, Steve McQueen style. It could have been the Springboks taking another step deeper into the mire that seems to be sucking them down, the quicksand there at the moment. But it's all the rugby sites and comments have lit up about, are the All Blacks thugs or are the Irish and the UK guys having a bit of a whinge?
As we said in the show title, is it New Zealand v Ireland? Dirty talk, and they're having a shot at each other, and usually unflappable Steve Hansen started to lose it a bit after the test match. Now, I'm not saying he's gone down the checker line, but he wasn't too happy about the line of questioning. Was it fair call? Have the Kiwis or the All Blacks been unfairly tainted as, you know, a bunch of thugs going high?
Yeah, look, firstly, I've got to say that was a real bruising test match. And I think it was very different to the test matches the All Blacks have been in this year. You know, tight game, they won it late, Ireland were in it all the way, and it was a real thumpathon. You know, it really was much more of an intense physical contest and a low-scoring one comparative to what we've seen a lot, particularly in the last year. Now, what we saw very clearly, and we saw it from the first minute with the All Blacks, is this team wanted redemption, right? They were so used to winning. They got a touch-up in Chicago, and you could see straight away they wanted to get it back. They felt like they hadn't delivered what they know they want from themselves and what they want from their fans, and they went hard. Now, to their credit too, Ireland came hard straight back at them. After that first 3 minutes, which I think I read Clive Woodward said took his breath away, and it was amazing from the All Blacks.
Amazing 3 minutes.
Ireland came back hard too and hammered away at them, and I think ended up with about 70% of possession. Now, what I'm going to say on were the All Blacks thugs and tackling high? Firstly, I'll say I think that the interview with Hansen, I think he answered the question a couple of times, and I think the lady kept needling him, that lady, the female commentator, and I think it was valid for him to bite back a little bit, so I didn't have a massive problem with that. I also don't think the All Blacks are thugs. I think what we saw, though, was a team that wanted to be on the front foot. They really wanted to get stuck in, and when you play like that, particularly in a game where you're going to be, when you've only had 30% of possession, things are going to go over the edge a little bit sometimes, right? I think they were really pushing that defensive line a lot. I think that they were trying to put a lot of heat into their tackles, and when that happens, things are going to slide up. People are going to take a step forward. They got pinged 14-4, and I thought it was valid, right? The All Blacks were really pushing the envelope. But as to particularly attacking the Irish in any sort of illegal way, I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I do as well. Like the All Blacks were pushing their defence to the letter of the law, really hard.
Or just over.
Or just over. Yeah, no, and one head-high tackle got what it deserved.
Yeah.
And that was it for, you know, as far as I'm concerned. Of course, there was Beauden Barrett's try where Johnny Sexton went high, so it may have been or may not have been a try. You know, we pretty much agree that he got a bit of ball to the grass. But
I think it's a try. I don't
know if it's totally convincing. I'm not sure on that. However, it would have been a penalty try anyway because Sexton went high in the process of scoring the try, basically took his head off. So, you know, there were some higher shots or tougher shots from Ireland, vice versa. So it was a tough game. The All Blacks aren't thugs. They play the game hard and fast. They played it harder with better contact this time against Ireland, and I think they were smarting a fair bit as a result. But I think the All Blacks have been unfairly treated as a result of this game. Casting doubt about what they went into the game to play. They're not as, you know, a team of thugs. They were playing the game hard.
Yeah, look, I think you're being a bit nice to them with the whole they've been cast unfairly. They're big boys. They can take a bit of criticism. And look, let's face it, when you go on tour and you're in someone else's country, you're going to cop a little bit. There's been some complaints from some of our viewers about the commentators. I'm like, when they're in Ireland, you're going to listen to Irish commentators and you're going to hear a bit of stuff you don't want to hear in the way you don't want to hear it. So I don't have a massive issue with that. What's
the matter with just saying, there's some high shots, but overall you say they're thugs?
What I'm saying is, it's not unexpected that you cop a bit, particularly when you're at the top of the hill, right? As the All Blacks are, people are going to try and chip you down.
No, the New Zealand and Ireland supporters have been going at each other too.
Yeah.
You know,
but let's talk specifically about some of those incidents in the game.
All right.
Okay, the two high shots in particular that we're going to talk about first, Sam Cane and Fekitoa, right? Now, Sam Cane, both of which have been cited, by the way. Now, Sam Cane's one, I don't have a massive problem with it, all right? Because I watched it a few times and I could see Sam Cane coming across. The arm was coming around and Henshaw twisted into him. So Henshaw's movement actually accelerated the clash between those two players. And I don't think Cane looked like he was going high by any means. He looked like he was going for a firm shot, and Henshaw came around and twisted in, and I think it was unfortunate. I didn't have a massive issue with it, except the fact that clearly Henshaw got injured and was no part of the game.
And that's some of the points that Hansel was making about the game, that players might fall into contact and an unfortunate movement of bodies.
Fekatoa, lazy, silly, poor tackle. Right?
Yeah, but he put his hand up.
He did. But that one was deserved of being looked at, right? And I think he was lucky not to get a red card. I think that could have been a red card, that one, because it was not malicious, but it was a complete lack of care, right? Complete lack of care, and I thought that was very poor. So that one deserved to be looked at, and it deserves to be wondering, did he get enough of a penalty on the park for that?
Well, for large slabs, they basically were red carded, weren't they? Because they had another yellow card in Aaron Smith.
They did. Now, the Aaron Smith yellow card, I didn't think it was a yellow card. I think the ball was out, right? So I think that was an unlucky one for the All Blacks. Aaron Smith coming through and trying to tow it ahead.
Was the referee getting frustrated, so to speak?
No, look, I think the other thing you've got to say is a 14-4 penalty count, and the All Blacks were pushing the envelope. You're going to end up on the wrong side sometimes, particularly when you are trying to lift it and push that envelope.
That is true, and not necessarily this game, but many games where players and teams have complained about a penalty count, sometimes you've infringed and you deserve to be pinged. So I guess you could go case by case through all the penalties, but the thing is that the Ireland, and there's a couple of comments made on our side, but they didn't always take the points, Ireland. And I think that sort of played in the hands of the Kiwis, the New Zealanders. I keep saying Kiwis as an overarching New Zealand, not the league team, so I just want to get that straight. But what do you think about Ireland and their opportunities to take points?
Yeah, like we talked about the game in Chicago and the way they were smart. I don't think they navigated this game as well. You've got to remember in that first 20 minutes...
Now, is that because they're under more heat defensively by New Zealand?
Absolutely. A massive part of it was New Zealand upped that defensive heat, and to go from conceding 5 tries to conceding none, I mean, nothing more needs to be said. They really lifted their game. Conor Murray got shut down. But you've also got to remember they lost Sexton and Henshaw, their 10 and their 12, within the first 20 minutes. Right, that's a significant blow to a side who were on a high from their previous game and were looking at those two to really have a big impact in the game. Now, Jackson and Ringrose, who came on, played well, but a bit of a change-up. And what we saw was, I think, the Irish back row and a lot of the forwards. I loved Rory Best, the hooker, Furlow at tight head, Van der Fleer, O'Brien, some great Irish forwards. And they really challenged the All Blacks around the park and put the heat on. But the decision-making and the capacity to turn any of that into something more wasn't there for 2 reasons. As you've mentioned, the defence, but also I think the loss of those controlling players.
All right, Beauden Barrett, let's talk about him. Great game. Fantastic game. Man of the match, thoroughly deserved, and really stood up in an important game where we knew Ireland were going to keep trying to knock the All Blacks off. But what was he thinking, Ben Kimber, when he not only ran over the try line, but he kept running into the grandstand? I thought he was still in Chicago, NFL style. So a try that should have been simple in the end after he did all that hard work became really, really difficult.
Yeah, it did, and I think he looked very contrite in the interview after the game, and he realised, I think when you're the goal kicker, you're probably the bloke who tries hardest to bring it round under the posts. So he knows he did it wrong. What a simple try, and the Irish will be kicking themselves over that.
Beautiful.
But off the set piece, a bit of gas from Barrett. Going through, I think, a couple of those guys who had just come on, so I think they maybe spotted or targeted some unsettled spots in that line. But Barrett beautifully through. Kudos to... Well, actually, Sexton was still on there, but I think they'd lost Henshaw. Kudos to Sexton, who chased him through. Yeah. Went high, was wrong, and look, unequivocally, the ball touched the grass. I can't understand why this one's a conversation. That was a try. Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think it clearly shows it touching the grass. However, it was a high shot and it was deserving of a penalty try in any case because he would have stopped him from scoring the try with an illegal play. Yeah. So, I think Beauden Barrett sort of answered a few critics maybe.
He did, but just on that point too, I think, and I've read a bit of this on some of our comments on YouTube and Facebook, the TMO, I think there's a little bit of a lack of clarity in how and when the TMO is engaged with the ref, particularly now that the ref, it used to be different, right? Now that they're showing on the big screen, that the ref can watch it. The ref can sit there with a different opinion to the TMO. Now, I actually think that Pepper had a different opinion. I think he wasn't going to award the try, and he was asking for confirmation from his TMO, who said yes, it was a try. Now, I agree with the TMO, but you can just see that it's creating this unease, and for us as fans and viewers, it doesn't leave a nice taste in the mouth if you don't think there's some decisive play going on from the officials.
Yeah, I've never been happy with the way rugby's implemented the TMO. Remember when we went through that stage where you could go back, 80 metres, a couple of phases to just determine, and you sort of do that a little bit now, determine what's happened to a try when it's got no business involving what happens at the other end. Like just let's pull it back a little bit and just save it for those absolute clangers. And that's the same thing cricket went through. It's to stop the clangers not become an intrinsic part of the decision making. It's to stop the clangers. Let's keep it to that. So I just find it really annoying at stages, and some of the talk is just comical. Like just outrageous. So the All Blacks won though, they hit back, and that's what a class team does.
They do, and there's a couple of guys I want to talk about specifically in there. I mentioned some of those Irish players who I thought went particularly well. Let's talk a little bit about some of the All Blacks though, and two guys I want to call out for the wrong reasons: Kieran Reid and Aaron Smith. Now, they both started the game fired up. I don't know if you saw in the haka, but Aaron Smith at the end of the haka actually stood up and pointed across to the Irish.
Right.
So probably Conor Murray, I'm not sure, but he was picking someone out with the long sleeves on too.
Yeah.
Nice look for Aaron.
Yeah.
I
used to play with long sleeves.
Did you really?
Yeah.
I'm sure that looked nice.
Yeah.
But he clearly was fired up. I don't think he had a great game. Some ordinary kicks,
So
some
TJ,
loose passes.
TJ always adds spark.
TJ has been the pick the last few games. Now, I stand by the fact that I think Smith's a better player. I just think he's coming back from the issues that he had being out for a couple of weeks. They put him straight back in. Wrong move, particularly when TJ has been sparky and has been looking good. So I think that's a mistake. And the other guy is, I think one of the reasons we talked about the Irish back row looking so good is Kieran Reid. Now, I think haven't seen a lot of commentary about Kieran Reid's game. And I think, look, he still has a high work rate. Kieran Reid still is there for 80 minutes working away. But it's the extra things and the more things that you'd expect from the Kieran Reid of a few years ago that we just aren't seeing. And I think he had a really, really quiet game again. Both as a captain and as a back rower, I don't think he's setting a high enough standard for what I'm sure he would like and what Hansen would like. And speaking of the back row, one more guy to mention.
Yep.
I think potentially playing himself into contention for that starting role. The 60 minutes from Artie Sevilla I thought was exceptional. I thought the energy and the physicality he brought was great, and that is
he needed to though,
and he did it for an hour, right?
Yeah.
So I think he's going to be looking for that starting spot if it keeps up.
Ireland were impressive though, because to do what they did against the All Blacks in 2 test matches, beat them for the first time in a century, and then really put it to them after that pulsating start. That first 3 minutes was unbelievable. Sean O'Brien was phenomenal for me.
Yeah.
The open side for Ireland is just like a little tank, and just go, isn't it?
He is. He was a part of a great back row effort, and I think, and this might sound a bit strange, but I think this game would worry Hansen more than the Chicago game.
Oh, really? Why do you say that?
Well, because in the Chicago game they made all those changes, right?
Yeah.
They had different guys in there. They were missing their second roles. This was a full strength side. The exception of maybe the centres and Crotty. But this was a full-strength side, and Ireland took it to them, and Ireland have showed that you can take this team on and really batter your way into them and mix it up. They didn't do as well in mixing it up themselves this game, but I really think this would have given the rest of the rugby world heart, and I know Eddie Jones would have the notebook out, and it's going to be a challenge for Hansen and the guys to think, well, how do we keep ourselves moving onwards and upwards as teams like Ireland mow us down?
And I think it's actually a wrap for Ireland and what Joe Schmidt's done with them.
Yeah, most definitely.
But they've got good players, and they've got a really good fly half, and I think that those players have had lines experience as well, so they know how to come together in the big games, especially when they came down and trounced Australia in that third test.
Yeah.
So I think Ireland have got plenty of players with experience now that really will challenge going forward, and they've got enough players with experience who are young enough to head into the next World Cup. So they've really done a great job, and I say look out Australia, because Ireland, even though they would have been beaten up physically at the weekend against the All Blacks, they'll be ready to go. They'll be battle hardened, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. We'll get on to Australia in a second, but is there anything else you want to add to about the New Zealand game?
No, look, I think as I said, it's just interesting to see the way Ireland stayed in that game.
Yeah. I noticed too early on the decoy runners coming into play, and it's starting to annoy me in other games as well. And players are putting their hands up saying, I've been interfered with, and the refs aren't even looking at it. I think it's about time they started cracking down on it again. I just don't like it because I think it's lazy tactical play. But that's for another show heading into Christmas. Let's talk about, lazy. Well, let's talk about disastrous, and it is South Africa. Another loss, the first ever to Italy. The first time they lost to England in 10 years the week before. It has been a horror tour, and they lost to Italy in a test that I think they're now calling for heads in South Africa severely.
And they have to. I know that Coetzee only took over in April, but he's had a rugby championship. I think they've lost 7 out of 11 or something like that. And to lose to Italy is a new low mark for this team. They really were very poor. As I've said before, some of the players I think are good players. They are not together as a team. There's definitely a South African show in us where we want to talk about the quota system, the impact on players leaving overseas and that. But the 15 guys that they've been picking the last few weeks, off the back of a good Lions season and a bit more, they should be much more competitive than they are, and something is rotten in that team. Something's not working. They're going to have to cut something out. They're going to have to make some changes.
Yeah, I think there is an element on the system they have in place. However, those players can win a test match that they have rolling out with them. And to see what the Lions did, for example, in Super Rugby this year, they went all the way but weren't in it when it came to the final. There's plenty of players there with great talent. They just have to focus on one thing first. Get their defence right and everything will flow. Yeah. I'm telling you, and it will work from there because it just builds the confidence. And then we'll see how they go because that's what Australia are doing. They're able to rely on their defence, which is really solid under Nathan Gray, and that's got them out of trouble big time. But South Africa could easily remedy that, and they don't need a 3-year plan. You could get a good coach in there who knows what they're doing, get them together for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Build something.
And that's right. Like often when you see a coach who's not doing too well, you hear a lot of language about a rebuilding process and,
the 5-year plan.
The young guys I'm bringing through. And, Cheika's done a bit of that this year when he went through some tough times.
Disappointed about that.
Yeah, talked a bit too much about that when it should be we're picking the best players we can for the country and we're going to put our best efforts out there. Now, on the box, one of the most telling things I saw, and there's been a few ex-Boxing players out there who have been, clearly quite distressed about the state of affairs. Bakkies Botha, the great big man who the hard man of rugby, the man who, if you had to pick guys you didn't want to have coming at your Bakkies, would be right up there. He tweeted how disappointed he is that clearly no one is afraid of South African rugby anymore. He would have taken pride in the fear that a box pack would bring to any team around the world, and he's just clearly quite distraught at the fact that that's not the case anymore. So it's not so much about the talent of the players there, but the mindset and the coaching and the way this team's coming together.
Yeah, so there needs to be something done at the top, and there's got to be a change. There has to be a change. They've called for a review. Every team has a type of review at the end of the season. I know I've been part of them in the past, but this one's going to be very, very ugly.
You'd have to say, though, and we talk about the box a lot, but what about Italy's turnaround from getting absolutely annihilated by the All Blacks the week before? And you've also got to say, the form lines are kind of true, right? When both the Box and the Italians last played New Zealand, they got wiped by a large score. So when they came together, it was pretty close.
Yeah, I have my suspicions about that game against the All Blacks from Italy. I reckon that they just didn't apply themselves to win the test match because of the way they played.
Target a game Eddie Jones style.
There was a bit of kicking and stuff like that. So I think in a way they were really thinking ahead as South Africa the game, and this is what a lot of Tier 2 nations would do, or teams that are not in the top 3 or 4. They will target the easiest team to knock off, and at times that's been Australia. With Argentina, you look at in past rugby championship games, but for this one, clearly Italy targeted South Africa
successfully,
and they got it right. Yeah. All right, so that was a victory to Italy by 20 points to 18. A great upset and great to see for the World Game. Getting closer to football.
Yeah, another one of those good results we've been having lately.
Absolutely. Australia, well, they got the win, and that was in the late morning here in Australia. But great victory over France, 25 points to 23. But it went right down to the wire. A drop goal went astray. after the 80-minute mark, and the French team, which played with crazy, amazing flair, almost beat Australia, but Australia's defence held firm and they got away with a win with a heap of changes. Were they lucky, Ben Kimber, or were they just deserved?
Look, it was a great escape. I think we talked about two teams that both needed to prove something, and we saw that. One of the things that always, you've got to remember about sport is the distance between success and failure can be quite small. And in this case, it was probably about 6 or 7 metres of the ball flying through the air on that last drop goal attempt and just missing the post.
They went too early with that.
We'd be having a very different conversation about Cheika and the Wallabies if that kick had gone over. Yeah. Right? Because I was a bit horrified by the team Cheika picked, like wholesale change like that. Someone suggested to me actually that maybe it was Cheika almost suggesting to the ARU who sets the schedule, too many tests. I can't actually drive a team through this, and so he's picked a test where he didn't run dead, but he definitely just wholesale change. I mean, that was massive. What we did talk about, you and I off camera, is Bernard Foley coming in, which I think you had a point about.
Yeah, so of course Quade Cooper had an ankle injury just before play had begun, well, happened earlier in terms of their warm-up, and so Quade Cooper was pulled out. That was a big piece of fortune for Australia, because I think if Quade Cooper had played, they wouldn't have had the staying power or the attacking power, the discipline in attack to do what Bernard Foley did, and that continuity of him playing with Will Genia.
Yeah, absolutely, and just so many points of change. The reason I found that team really interesting and was not particularly pleased about it was because the previous week we just talked about that Hansen had too many points of change to get his continuity right for that game in Chicago. So all of a sudden, almost a new 15, not quite, but for the Wallabies, you're dead right. Keeping Genia and Foley together made a big, big difference in this side, because new centre combo, new back three, new back row, new second row, new front row, the whole thing on the table. And what we saw was a whole bunch of guys playing together as a 15 for the first time and getting away with it. So you have to say that it is a great win for the Wallabies, because they did make so many changes. France did come back at them, and France's ball movement, you liked it at times. Their offloads, their support play, they tried too much of it, but when they did do it, it was nice. They took us on down that left-hand side, or our right-hand edge, their left-hand edge, and they found space. Fofana had a very good game. I thought their halfback went all right. They really weren't amazing, the French, and the Wallabies had to scramble and dig deep a lot, but geez, what an escape.
It was an escape, and if France had had some discipline, especially if you go back and look at the breakdown, for example, after they created a lot of this play and go forward, their placing of the ball was just so sloppy, and it was rushed. And some of that rush play was a benefit against Australia because they broke the line quite readily. But some of the passing was ridiculous. I mean, I think I said to you off air as well that if they could flick past within the scrum, they would have done it. So some of it was just over the top and completely frustrating for the coach. It was scintillating to watch, but at times they just needed to pull back a little bit, just rein it back a little bit, Ben, and lay the ball back so the receiving player could actually pick it up without worrying about it bouncing all over the place. Go and have a look at it again. There was too much of that stuff, and it made it hard for France to continue to put the pressure on Australia, and it let Australia off the hook. So given all that, the way that France still put the pressure on Australia would be worrying, but Australia still got at its core a very good defensive plan, and that saved Australia squad-wise. Squad-wise, Ben, because it wasn't just the same 15 playing, the whole squad bought into it. But you bagged him last week, in the centre.
Kurandrani?
Yeah.
Well, he scored the winning try,
and he scored basically the winning try. I thought that try was incredible, where he just made it into the corner, hit the corner post,
finish,
right
absolutely
on the line,
finish.
Stayed in the air, great finish. That basically won the game for Australia. He was better on the weekend. What did you think?
He was better, and I want to talk now about a few of the guys and how I thought they went. He was better on the weekend, and I'm actually not that happy about it, because I don't think he's the longer-term answer, and I want to see Folau there, right? But he did go better than he had the previous week. Across the park, some really key things to talk about on this Wallaby side. David Pocock is a 7.
Yeah, he was enormous.
David Pocock is an open side, right? It was almost like
he was captain too.
Captain, and but almost like a mindset change for him. All of a sudden, from the starting whistle, he was on that ball, like really like a terrier, like the 7, like the world-class 7 that we know he is. Not trying to play a 6 or an 8, not doing anything that was quite different from what we know he's best at. So, I'm still hoping that Cheika will find himself a 6 that he likes, and we get back to maybe a Hooper-Pocock combo with one coming off the bench. And my preference would be for Pocock to start. Now, some other guys to talk about. Kyle Godwin had a nice, really involved game at 12, so good to see that talent coming through. Biggest points for me in terms of selection, though, probably came in the back three. Now, the back three for me, Morahan, Naivalu and Spate.
Yep.
I don't think Spate is claiming that jersey well enough. He's been given a few chances in the test side. He is not performing well enough for me to say he's going to hang on to that jersey. He hasn't stepped up from Super Rugby with the kind of dominance that he has in Super Rugby when he can really take guys on. I thought Naivalu went very well. Defensively, positionally, I thought he had a good game. And for a guy who's new onto the international scene, I was very impressed. But the guy I really want to mention is Luke Morahan at 15. Came into the game, wasn't in the squad to start. Remember the controversy over Korobidi was the controversy. Morahan was brought in late. Started at 15 for the Wallabies against the French and really showed some nice lines, some nice spark, some good toe. And I think he's an option to go in a back three with Haylett, Petty and Folau. What do you think?
Well, so I want to ask you about Korobidi. If you're going to play him any test, that was the test to play him in.
Well, he's playing in the Wallabies 15 against the French Barbarians, I think, on the Thursday night this week. But you're dead right. Again, we've talked about Cheika. I think Cheika sometimes loses games at the selection table. Yeah. I think some of his selections often leave a bit to be desired. And while, he gets the team's mindset well, etc., but he doesn't quite get the combos and the guys right. And bringing Korobidi along just now seems strange, particularly when you bring Morahan in and then play him in a game you've admitted and shown you want to try a whole bunch of different guys. What is Korobidi on the tour for, if not that game? Yeah,
no, absolutely. And I think some of those, the back three was impressive. But you're right with Spate. There's some issues there. Yep. There's no doubt about that. Where there's not an issue is at scrum half, Will Guinea. So Will Guinea was fantastic, had an involvement in Australia's tries as well when he gave a beautiful ball to a hard-running Bernard Foley, who came through. That was just brilliantly run, hit a great line. And sort of Foley's he's been there, he's running the game well. You've got to know, I said this to Ewan McKenzie when he finally picked Kurtley Beale as his fly half. Nail your colours to the mast. Make sure you pick your 9 and 10 and stick with them, because that is the core of your delivery. And if that service gets interrupted by changes in selection because, we've got a huge squad to choose from, you're just not going to make it. And that 9 and 10 is so vital. And of course, his big looping pass set up the winning try for Tavita Kurandrani as well. Can they get past Ireland with him? But more importantly, can they get through the next week if he doesn't get released to play the final game against England? Yeah, look, I am not confident about the Wallabies' chances against either Ireland or England. I've said it in the last couple of shows. They've scraped past Scotland. Big step up. They've scraped past France. So both of those teams are not on a par with the kind of structured, controlled, mixed, game that we're seeing from England and Ireland. You're dead right. I think we've talked about Ireland might be bruised after playing the All Blacks, but I think they're going to be in good shape. They're going to have guys who are ready to punch it and punch it hard. Yeah. And I think that the Wallabies have to go into those final two tests as underdogs. There was only the Sexton got roughed up though and had to leave the field, so that's their big issue. So true. What a player to miss out on. But I think Ireland will definitely be hard to beat, and they will believe in themselves for this game against Australia. But the point you asked me about too was Genia. They need him for England. They probably won't get him. It's hard to get these guys released outside of where they have to be. But he needs to be there. Do you think Cheika's been spending most of the time in Paris trying to sort that out? Well, he speaks French, so at least he can have the proper conversation with the guys in their own language. Absolutely. So we're getting close to our viewer comments of the week, so let's quickly mention that here's a good indication. Australia beat Wales in their first game quite easily, but guess who almost beat them or came close to a draw? Japan. And it was only a drop goal at the last minute that gave Wales a winning margin. And so Japan that just goes to show that well lately either. Yeah, that just goes to show you that Wales are struggling big time. Yeah. And then the Scots and the Argies? Wow, Scotland. I'm so happy for them that they won the game, but they stuck at it, and that was another thriller as well. Yeah. Another late kick. And really interesting on the form lines there too. The Argies showed some good fight in the Rugby Championship.
and to go into a game against Scotland and really battle it out, you probably would have thought the Argies would go on with it a bit more after the Rugby Championship, go a little bit better than they have. So probably disappointing for them, but kudos to Scotland, who played good footy against Australia and then have got the win the following week.
Out of all the games, who was your most impressive? Who were you impressed with?
Out of the
all
players,
the Test victories, the teams.
Out of the teams,
yeah.
Look, Ireland, I think, really impressed me, and All Blacks are number one, and you expect them to win. Okay, so we're talking about impressive, and the reason Ireland impressed me is even when things didn't go right in getting their attack there, the way they took the All Blacks on, the way they got stuck into them, and it took a really complete defensive performance from the All Blacks to stop them.
Yeah.
And the other thing I didn't mention too was Barrett's kicking game improved.
Yeah.
Barrett mixed it up. A couple of chip kicks, cross-field kicks, line finders, really got a better structure around keeping the Irish guys moving backwards a little bit.
Oh, and Retallick. What about Retallick? He was enormous.
Yeah.
And, the difference he makes in the engine room.
He does too, because what he does is being that big man in the centre of the field, which is a force to be stopped, but also his ball playing ability means that they can really structure things around looking like he is as a decoy, or actually using him to bullock forward or even pop a little offload. Yeah, he was very important.
Yeah, so he was important. So the All Blacks getting that victory, getting revenge against Ireland, and there's that banter with the fans going at each other, the media going at each other. There might be this new superpower arrangement going on, Ireland and New Zealand.
Yeah. Too much talk about the refs, though. Let's get on with the rugby.
Yeah, so let's forget about them. Well, you know what we should do? Is get to the strike viewer comments of the week. And you got heaps of them.
We've got heaps of them. And we keep saying it. Quality comments. Yep. Great to hear. Keep them coming. Got a lot of guys I want to shout out to because there's just that many comments that are worth talking about. But shout outs to Leon Parra, Dean Garnett, Warimu Comp, Lorcan O'Reilly, some more of the Irish guys who were turning up, Les James, Patrick Powell, Clint Summers, James Bonder, Michael Abbey, who made a good point highlighting that story around the inequality in pay between England and Fiji. Yeah. We've got to get into that later, but £22,000 a player for England and $400 for Fiji. Something's wrong. Got to be fixed.
Martin Nindola is a good mate of mine, so I think in the off-season we might try and hook up with him on Skype. Yeah.
Jonathan Keith Jacobs for sharing the show out with his South African mates. Marnus Richter, Miziabo Singwango. A couple of really special shout-outs to two guys. Tony Atkins, who was in Kaikoura working on the earthquake zone, and said he came back from working on the earthquake zone and said hi to the family in the second that he did his watch RuggaMatrix. So
great stuff.
Good on you, Tony,
good work,
for that,
Tony.
that work.
Great stuff.
The other one is Lars Persson, who, true to his promise, sent us a whole bunch of videos from...
we're looking at him now.
Yeah, from the Dublin game. He travelled to that game and he took some crowd footage, and what an atmosphere and what a great effort for him to share that with us.
It looks great, doesn't it?
Thank you, Lars. Fantastic.
Go, Lars.
Philly Steve Tupper for correcting my pronunciation of Ioane. So I'm getting it wrong with Rico last week. I was saying Ioane. So thank you, Philly, and keep on me with my pronunciations, mate.
That's every week, mate.
One quick shout out to the last one. I'm giving away one more book.
What?
Last book.
Tony Johnson is blowing up.
Last book. 4 books we gave away. Behind the Silver Fern. I'll also post on our Facebook page links to where you can buy the book yourself.
Yes.
This week's book goes to not just one comment, but a guy who's given us comment after week after week. Consistency we talk about.
Yes.
Rob Martin shows it on our YouTube page, and he chips it on Facebook as well.
Have you seen his setup?
He's got an awesome setup where he watches all his rugby, and he dissects it all with what he calls his weekly diatribe. So if you haven't read Rob's stuff...
There's a game video here. There's our show, and he goes through it. Fantastic stuff.
So thank you, Rob. DM me your details, mate. We'll get a book out to you.
Now, you've given all these books away. Have you got any for us?
No.
Yeah.
TJ, send me a book, will you?
TJ can read it. Come over and visit and read to us at night. Got a great voice.
Not what I was thinking.
And quickly, just we're going to go 2 minutes to go. Tonight we went to the Business Rugby Network.
Australian Rugby Business Network.
Yeah, in Sydney, and our good friend Brett Patworth was there, and he didn't hold back. It was interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah, he got stuck in. It was an interesting panel. It was
there's a big crowd there too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Pip Marlowe, who's on the ARU board and is the CEO of Microsoft Australia. It was Andrew Hoare, a Kiwi guy who is the New South Wales CEO, and it was Pappy. And it was a really robust discussion about the state of Australian rugby, where the money goes, the ARU strategy. Really enjoyed it, and we have to get Pappy back in future to talk more about it, and I think someone from the ARU probably too. Yeah,
absolutely, and it was funny. We saw Pappy beforehand. He said, I'm not really going to get into it, and then bang, straight into it. Hit him right between the eyes. All right, Ben, good to see you, mate.
Thank you, mate. One last thing. If you haven't seen my post on Jonah Loma on our Facebook page, please check it out.
Great post.
And shout out to Hams from the Kahu Group who asked me to mention it. But I talked about my one-on-one interview with Jonah and the anniversary of his death this week. What a legend. Please check out that Facebook post.
Absolutely, and I remember when one of my mates who was working with me at Channel 7, I got him in years ago, helped carry Jonah's bags, and he'll never forget that as well. So, Jonah, we miss you. What a legend. And to all our New Zealand friends, I know that it hurts this time of the year, but we'll never forget him. Never forget him. All right, thanks, Ben Kimber. And don't forget to like us, to thumbs up and subscribe on YouTube. Do all that and share us out. We really want to spread the word. Until next week, enjoy your rugby. Look out, Ireland and Australia will be watching.